Welcome, everyone, to episode three. Oh, hi, Martin. Let me be right back with you to episode 338 of Dial the Gate, the Stargate Oral History Project. My name is David Reed. We just keep on going and going. Martin Wood, obviously, is joining us for this episode. You know what? Let's just bring him in.
Surprise.
Happy Father's Day, sir.
Thank
How
you.
are you?
Thanks so much. I'm great. I'm having a ball.
Great. And happy Father's Day to my old man, David Arnold Reed, sitting 30 paces away from me right now. He's here today watching pretty much all of my shows live. So to all the dads out there who have made not only our lives possible, but our lives something special. Martin, you told me you lost your father in the last couple of years. This day is probably not the easiest for you right now.
You know what? What's really interesting, David, is because you're doing this on that day, it makes it easier because my dad was such a massive fan. Um, Ever since the very first day that he came in to watch what was going on set, he was hooked. He started to watch the show and has watched ever since. He watched so many times over and over and over and
So
over
he was a
again.
fan.
He was a super fan, actually.
Wow.
It is literally the last 15 years of his life. It's what we talked about all the time. And he came to set. He met the cast. He would love to visit all the time. He'd come in and he'd just hang out on set. And SG1 was anytime I called to talk to him. My mom would always say, "Oh, he's watching Stargate," and we'd both laugh because it's the only thing he ever did. And especially when he started getting sicker in the end, he sort of had a special chair where he sat and watched it, and then he had a special place in his bed where it just turned on, and he watched it over and over. And I would start each conversation with, "Which episode are you watching right now?"
What do you want?
And he'd go, but he wouldn't just. He was one of those fans that could just and he was way past where I was, because even though I'd done it, it was so many years ago, but he's seen it 5 times. And he'd
Wow.
ask me something about um, what Jolinar was wearing on his hip. Why did he have this time? Like, I don't know. You
Yeah.
have to describe where. And he talked to me and he said, "Here, I'll show you."
Yeah, I'll
And then
pull it
he'd
up
turn the
for
camera
you.
on and he
Yeah.
shows me, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, now I realize why that was there." And it was just, yeah,
Wow.
it was funny.
To
It was very funny.
have parents who appreciate and respect what we do is one thing. To have parents who love what we do is something else,
Yeah,
and who get
yeah,
into
very
it
much.
more than we do. My father has watched every episode of the show. He doesn't
Yeah.
know Stargate, but he
Oh,
knows
seriously, he
Stargate.
doesn't. Yeah, he knows it through you.
He keeps on saying, "We're going to sit down and watch it." I'm like, "Dad, you're 78.
Yeah,
There's 17
yeah,
seasons."
yeah,
That I didn't know that story, Martin. Thank you for sharing that. That's
yeah.
wonderful.
So apropos, when I got your email saying Sunday, and I thought, "Oh, this is great," because my dad would get such a kick out of the fact that I'm talking about him on your show. It would That would be just one of those things that he would find very, very cool. He used to when I email him from here, every time he'd point this thing out behind me. Um, do you recognize that?
That is the ship that I believe transports souls from Earth to the afterlife, if I'm not mistaken.
Nope,
It is
nope,
not.
no. This was mounted. My dad gave that to me, by the way. It's the what is it? The USS. Hang on for a sec.
It looks just like it.
The USS Akron. It's a an airship, a blimp that was, but it was also part of Jonas's homeworld. The scientists in Jonas's homeworld, that was on the wall, and the Davidsons,
Yep.
they mounted it for me, for that show, and I said, going to take that whole mounting and put it in my den. So, yeah.
Absolutely. No, what a great little memento. Did your dad notice it?
Oh, yes,
Of
and
course he
told
did.
me, he said, there's two of them. Where's the other one? What's the other one? I said, the other one didn't belong to me. He goes, I gave you the other one. I said, no, that wasn't one you gave me. That wasn't the
Oh,
print he gave me, but he wanted me to
wow.
have both of them. There was another one that was hanging in the wall.
These are the Easter
So,
eggs that I just love about
yeah,
this and
yeah.
any piece of media that I love to watch. On the subject of fathers, I went back and I checked our conversations on Dial the Gate, and I was like, this isn't possible. How have I never asked you about Don in our conversations on this
Oh,
channel?
yeah.
And it's like, seriously? And I haven't. I was privileged to know him. We shared an alma mater. It always gave us something to talk about when we met. And pure gentleman.
Yes.
Do you have a
Yeah.
memory or two of Don?
Uh, Don and my dad were great friends. From the
Ah,
first time that Don came in, or that my dad came in to Don's office, we were shooting something, and the two of them hit it off because they were both artists. And I mean, my dad he taught school, he taught art for so long, and Don, with his art and things like that, he and my dad hit it off in a huge way. And uh, they would talk. My dad would call Don. Don would call my dad, and they would talk an awful lot about it. And my dad was so proud of the fact that Don liked me as a director. He said, "You know what? He really likes working with you. He thinks that you're fantastic." And I'm like, "Great. I hope all of them do."
yeah.
But he's like, "No, Don, he likes you a lot."
But Don meant a lot to him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, no, I find that um, thinking about Don. I was actually thinking about him a little while ago. Uh, we went out on for the memorial. All of us got together on Amanda's boat, and Amanda's husband took us out uh, into the water so we could have a memorial.
For your father.
Um, for Dawn.
Oh, for Don
Um,
Davis.
yeah,
I see.
um, after Dawn died, and I just remember. I remember um, how that boat trip especially affected people. That we were all sort of talking and sharing memories about Don, and for me, Don was always the kindest person on the set. He was always, there was you could always depend on him to find the humor in whatever was going on. And he didn't contribute to the humor the way that Rick and I mean, everybody else sort of had their own sense of humor that they brought to it. Don just laughed at everybody. He just laughed along with everybody. He thought everybody was funny, and it was really easy. It was really easy to make fun of something Don had done, and he would be the first to tell you that he'd done something, and then he'd smile at you and laugh, and you were laughing along with him, and it was just it's a wonderful thing to do with an actor, to have them be so self-deprecating that they go, "Oh, I've so screwed this up. Do you want me to start again, or do you want me to just keep going? Because I was such an idiot. Do you want me to do it again?" I'm like, "Yes, Don. We actually have to get it right." And he'd laugh, but he would laugh at everybody else's jokes. He would laugh at everything.
He didn't have anything to prove, and he loved being there. You know,
Yeah,
that role was
yeah,
made, my understanding, for him. And
yeah,
he just embodied that character, and he spent time in the army. He knew that
yeah.
role. He
Yes,
had
very
words
much.
for Mario as a party about the choices in the pilot, and every pilot has to start somewhere with the characters, and he got us invested in him, and was very much he was the central figure for that episode, for that series for 7 seasons. And I
Yeah,
had oh, come on, David. Heather Ash. I had Heather on, and she had actually written a story that was going to heavily feature Don, SG-1, trapped off world, communicating with Hammond in his dreams, trying to
Oh,
reach him. And it would have heavily featured Don. Instead, we got Chain Reaction. It was for like season 3 or 4. But
hmm
it makes you wonder, it's one of my regrets as a viewer not getting to see more Hammond-centric stories. But at the same time, being thankful for what we got. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Don always comment on the fact that his whole thing was, I'm support.
yep.
I am the support for these stories. Everything bounces back off of me into something else, but I'm not a central character here. I am a character that information flows through and comes back out, and there's a lot of exposition that he does to get us on point with things. He's the audience asking the question, "What do
Hmm.
you mean by that, Colonel? What do you mean by that? What does that mean to the mission? How is that pertinent to what we need to know?" He was the one asking those questions. So absolutely essential to the story. And he knew that. He felt that you couldn't get around his character. And I think that we stumbled a little bit around with Rick as in that position, um,
Mm-hmm.
until we brought Bo in. And it's funny because somebody asked me something the other day about when Bo was the president.
Yes.
And I was thinking, oh,
Whole
wait a
different
minute,
energy.
that was a different, it wasn't one of my episodes. Pretty sure it wasn't one of
The
my
road not
episodes, but
taken.
it was right. It wasn't one of my episodes. That was the different dimension
Yes.
that Carter's in. Yeah. Um, Very interesting that we chose Beau Bridges for that. Um,
I,
you
I,
know,
I'm trying to figure out where I read. I don't know if he was. Oh, you chose him because William Devane was unavailable. Andy
okay.
Makita directed it. Alan McCullough wrote
Okay.
it, but it was
Yeah.
written for President Hayes. But what was so interesting about that was it took a character that we knew and loved and cared for in a certain way and said, okay, let's give this one ambition. And
hmm
also a world that is exposed to alien life for the first time and is absolutely on fire. And Bo played that very chillingly with how
Yeah.
comfortable he was with that power.
Well,
And it was a great
he was
episode.
that, yeah, he was the president that said, this is what we need to do to survive. This is what has to happen,
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
and with none, you're right, with none of the empathy that he had as a general,
Yeah, that was what was the
you
chilling
know.
part about it was you have to make those perhaps even the same choices. Maybe not all of them in terms of like altering the news, but in the chilliness of at which he was so comfortable with executing that was a compelling
Mhm.
story, and Andy Makita did great.
He did,
So
and I thought that Amanda did a fantastic job as well because it necessitated her reacting as the audience would
yep,
to, I can talk to him, I can get to him,
yep.
I can get to him. She goes into his office and can't get to him the way that she normally
This is not the
would.
man she knows. No, I won't help
No,
you subvert democracy is one of my favorite lines from the show. I think about it all the
yeah,
time. I
yeah,
want to talk about first. These are going to go chronological, only
yes,
because I wasn't more creative. A Matter of Time. This is a season 2 episode, one of the few episodes that played with relativity from a scientific perspective with the show. We dial a black hole,
right,
and that energy translates through the Stargate and starts will eventually suck all the state of Colorado, everything through it. Great
hmm
idea. Very expensive
yes,
episode, I might imagine. Some cutting edge
yes,
visual
yeah,
effects. And
yeah,
some of the folks who worked on it said, who am I thinking of? Craig Vandenbigler, I believe, he was one of the ones who were responsible for a lot of those shots, was happy with some of the shots and frankly, really not happy with others. I think you did like
oh yeah,
you had
I know
a,
which ones, yeah,
yeah.
very much.
So let's talk about that. How did you pull off that effect, particularly
So
climbing down on a winch to
yeah,
lower a bomb above the Stargate, and you have to move the entire room like this?
yes,
All of the
yeah.
action.
So there's a couple of different there's so many different elements to it that it was one of those things that I didn't storyboard all of the big pieces that I did through the years in Stargate, because some of them would just sit in my head and just it wasn't a problem for me. But quite frankly, that was one that I had to sit down and really figure out in terms of where I was going to be with the different angles, because I needed to not only be on top of Marshall and Rick and the bomb and be moving with them, and of course they were upright like this,
Yep.
so the camera was turned sideways, and the camera's traveling sideways like this with them, but I also needed to get above them so that I had the perspective from the gate room where Tilk and Carter are looking down towards the gate with them. So I had to get high enough above them that we could see the gate below them. So it's green screen work. It's part of it is a gate room that's turned sideways. For very little of it, by the way, there's very little of it was done in the gate room. Um, a lot of it was done in another stage, and a giant green screen that I had Marshall and Rick suspended from, and so they're just climbing down like this. They're Jumaring down and things that on that. So for Marshall's fall and all that kind of stuff, I wasn't in the actual gate room itself,
Okay.
because the gate room, of course, turned sideways, but we didn't have a bottom on it.
Yeah.
There was no gate. There was nothing
Right.
there. It was a green screen. So in order to get that, I ended up putting elements together of this green screen version, shooting like this down the line and getting them like this. And there was all these different inserts and stuff like when the piece of glass has to hit the rope that's going to drop Marshall,
Mm-hmm.
and I just remember Marshall and Rick being so sore having
Oh, I
to be
bet.
suspended for so long. Yeah, because there's the whole there's an act and a half of them, of them on those wires, and having to climb up and down, and we'd raise them up, but we'd have to they just climb down. So then they'd lock in, and we'd raise the more rope up, and then we'd climb back down again. Um,
There's a couple of things at play here. One, I think the logistics nightmare of keeping track of everything. Not only do you have the problem of, for instance, the glass breaking. Let's just take that as a single slice in and of itself. So you have the glass breaking, great, that's fine. But on top of that, it's breaking at it's moving at different velocities based on where the perspective of the
where you
camera
are.
is. So
Yeah.
the logistics of all of this had to be a nightmare. Just
Well,
absolutely
that's Brad's
crazy.
brain, though. That's Brad's brain figuring that stuff out. So I would, what I figured out is that regardless of anywhere anybody else is, where the camera is, as Einstein says, the observer,
That's
time
right.
runs normally, right?
That's
So
right.
for everything we did, time ran normally. The only time when I didn't do that was when what's his name was at the gate reporting back, and you
At
could
the
hear his,
Irls. Yeah.
yeah. But I had trouble with it because I said to Brad, I don't want to cut to him and see him doing that,
Yeah.
because it means our observation is that he's talking slowly.
Yeah.
But Brad said that's what it would be. You can't be at him and have him talking slowly,
Yeah.
but you can be at Carter's POV,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
So
then he can be talking slowly. So
that's
we
right.
had to, in the edit, we had to sort of adjust it, because I wanted him to be talking normally when we were there, but then it sounded too funny to cut back and forth between the slowed down version of it,
Well, the
to
audience
get to
wouldn't.
Carter.
The audience would get what you were doing, but they would be busy going, "Okay, what's happening here? Why am I hearing this? Oh!"
Yeah,
It would pull them out of the story. Just like
yeah,
the bomb with the glass is one thing. Like it breaks, and then from Carter and Tilkson Tyler's perspective, it goes slower as it goes further away.
right,
Which, if
right,
this was actually happening, this gravity field is too intense for anything. This is the conceit of TV. But at
yeah,
the same time, as Jack climbs up the rope, the bomb slows down.
yeah,
And it's like, so he
yeah,
has the further he gets away, the further he has a chance to get further away.
Right.
So the whole thing,
It's
how
true.
you pulled it off
Yeah.
as good as it was, is just a hell of a thing. And on top of that,
I got to tell you,
yeah,
I was going to say that Chris, the one thing I remember about Chris lowering the bombs is he's going, "What the hell am I doing? Why don't I just cut the rope here?"
yeah,
I'm like, you can't. You have to do. He goes, "No, I'll cut the rope. I don't have to do this." And I'm like, "No,
they have
you're
to set
slowing
it
it
at a
down."
certain height.
Yeah, yeah.
That's right. He's slowing down. So this shot here, is this a rear screen projection?
No, that is real. That's in the gate room.
Wow. I always
Yeah.
thought it was fake.
No, I don't think so. That to me is one of the ones because it's including the wire on the right hand side. I
Okay.
believe that's that's the real room.
It just looks so high up.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I mean, remember that Midway, like literally when they're in a set that's standing upright, they're midway.
That's true.
So this is a midway shot. This is just as they're getting into the edge of the kawoosh, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's it for sure. And I have to ask, can you see my mouse?
Yeah.
Okay. So Richard Hugh Dolan revealed to us that at a certain point when the SGC walls go higher up, they switch from the regular, what's the material called? Sheetrock that's painted to look like cement to a fabric. Is this the seam where that fabric begins going up? Is that what that is?
I think if that's the turn sideways one,
Yeah.
I think the whole thing is fabric.
Wow.
I think that seam is supposed to be the relief in the wall.
Okay.
That is there, but I think the whole thing was fabric because we did not raise plywood up like that. We raised it was all painted.
Well, I remember like
walls.
at the SGC at the bottom, you could put your hand on the wall there and your brain is expecting concrete and it's not. But he said like at the higher ups parts, at the very least, that was because they didn't need to spend the money on it. It just needed to look right.
It's as high as it's at the boardroom, the bottom of the boardroom window, because we were able to put stuff against the wall.
I see.
Up to the boardroom window, but anything above the boardroom windows on the sides, we weren't allowed to touch.
That's makes absolute sense because it would disappear.
Yeah.
It only needs to be as real as it looks. That's it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I know in certain circumstances, like if you were going to have a fight or have them make contact with a wall, you had to let all the people drafting all of the sets and everything know in advance so that they could make a more secure spot. So
well, what we would do is we'd brace the walls where they were going to hit it.
Wow.
You put a jack in behind it, and then you'd put weight against it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know if I've ever told you that. I'm just trying to look up something and see if I got this right.
I'm thinking of Adam Baldwin as Dave Dixon in Heroes Part 2, wiggling the rocks around while they're fighting the Jaffa.
Yeah.
It's little things like that. That's like, ooh, okay, we're just gonna move on.
Where is it? Oh, and I'm so sorry I missed the other guys thing. That would have been a lot of fun.
So a backstory there, we had Patrick McKenna and John Billingsley on, and stupid dopey me were doing the live stream, and it's like, you know what? You have Martin's number. Text him and see if he's free for a Zoom chat for 5 minutes. And it didn't occur to me beforehand to even try, Martin. I'm sorry.
I wish I had, because I would have loved to talk to those guys. We had so much fun. That was Damian Kindler's first script, and we had so much fun with it. They were just hysterical. I remember just laughing the entire time.
And they loved it. I hope you've had a chance to watch the episode, or I can send you a link because they have fond memories of it. So. Very good show.
Do send me a link of it because I'd love to see it. What I was going to say was that have I told you the Kurt Russell story before? I think I did.
When he came to set
at one point. Yeah.
I don't remember you telling it.
I remember walking onto set in the control room and looking around and going, "Why are all these people here? Why have we got all these extra people from the office and things like this are standing on the set?" And we're going into something, and I'm about to roll, and I turn, and there's a man standing beside me, and I didn't recognize him because I'm just slightly behind him. And he steps back, and it was Kurt Russell. And I went, "Oh,
No one told you.
welcome." He goes, "I'm so sorry. I should ask if I'm okay on your set." And I went, "Hell yeah, you own this place, man." And
Right.
he goes, I'm so sorry. I should have asked. I asked your first AD if it was okay if I just sort of sit and watch. I said, "What do you think?" He goes, "It's smaller than mine, but you got way more lights, way more blinky lights."
Wow. What a
So,
memory.
yeah, yeah. And I don't know if anybody told you that Brad and Rick were really trying to get him to do the elevator gag. Did you hear about that?
Tell me.
That they were going to ask Kurt because he was shooting in the studio next door. Yeah, shooting on the lot. He wasn't next door, but he was on the lot. And what we really wanted to do was just a quick shot of Rick in the elevator, and the doors open, and uh, and Rick walks out, and Kurt walks in uniform, and turns around, and Rick goes, "Jack." He goes, "Colonel." Walks, and they walk away from each other. The doors close on Kurt. That would have been hilarious.
What did Kurt say?
I don't remember, and I have a vague memory of the fact that it would have meant he had to change out of what he was in. He would have had to change his costume, and he couldn't do that on the day that he was available for it or whatever. And it was like it would have been weird to have him in an Elvis costume coming into this thing. So yeah, but yeah, something fell apart with it. But it would have been so fantastic to do that.
It's the little things. He got to see the set, you know, he got to appreciate what you guys had created with the raw material that he and their team had started off with. And
Hmm.
that in itself is really special.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
very cool, man.
yeah.
Divide and Conquer, season 4. This
Right.
is an episode that polarized fandom more than any. I had
Because of Martouf, or
because of
Jack
Martouf's
and
death.
not because of Jack and Sam
No, they loved it.
saying
They
that they
loved it.
liked each other.
The
Okay.
huge majority of fandom, 90+% loved it. The fact was, this was the first major death of an ally in the show. The show had never really done this before for a recurring satellite character. And I've had Vanessa Angel on this season, and I've had Andrew Jackson on this season, not the president, but the Tok'ra president.
Hmm.
And Andrew actually mentioned to me how he remembered there being a little bit of a tenseness on set because it was JR's last day, and you were shooting him out of the show. What can you remember of that, or was it just another day from your perspective?
Oh, something like that wouldn't have been just another day. No, I mean it would have been. I'm trying to see.
This divided fandom in the poll, the Gate World poll was a real good bearing on an episode. And for the
Yeah,
first 6 or 7 seasons of the show, there was never a polarizing poll like this one, where half of the audience loved the show and half of the audience hated the show. And we
yeah,
went and into the forums and read the feedback afterwards, and it's because it was amazing because they killed Martouf. They went there, and I hated it because they killed Martouf. I can't believe they went there, and I forget who said it. If art makes you feel something, it's done its job,
yeah.
man.
I it's interesting. I was never a Zaytark fan.
Oh boy.
Um, uh, and I think that doing one of these, there was so much. There's so much involved with it. Vanessa coming in, and JR going out, and it's really funny. I met JR a couple of years ago. We we went into because it's not the only show I've killed him on. I think I may have killed him on Sanctuary as well. Um, but uh, I met JR, and he was with a nephew or something like that,
Ah,
and he introduced me as the guy who killed me on Stargate. And I thought, wow, that's what you remember of that whole thing, JR. And we were laughing about it, but it was very funny
wow.
that was how he introduced me to his nephew. Um,
Well, it's not often that you
But
can say that kind of thing, you know? And
yeah.
with cheeky humor, and at the same time, well, he did kind of do that. So
Oh
that's
yeah,
great
believe
stuff.
me, I meet stunt guys every day, and their whole thing is, "You killed me 9 times, 9 times in 10 years," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's the job,
You
you
got
know."
paid for it, didn't
Um,
you? You're here,
yeah,
aren't you?
exactly,
But did you
exactly.
die?
And then there's guys like Ryan Robbins
Ryan
that
Robbins.
it's like, "Thank you so much for not killing me."
Yeah.
You know that I told you that story about Atlantis with uh it was literally a call upstairs to the guys saying, "I don't think we should kill this guy. I think he's fantastic. We got to hang on to him." So I'm sure I told you the story, but he
I
was
don't
supposed
think
to go
so.
through the
Go
gate
ahead.
and get. Okay, so he was supposed to be running away. They're all running away,
Yep.
and and just before they get to the gate, he was supposed to be shot and killed, and he falls through the gate and is now gone. So we ended up killing him. But on the day we were shooting it, I said to him, I said, "Man, I want to keep you around." He goes, "Well, don't kill me. Make it
Yeah.
so that the shot goes through the gate." And I said, "Doesn't kind of work like that. I need to sort of be definitive about it." And so I called upstairs and said, "Guys, I really think that he would be a really good ongoing bad guy because he did such a great job of this." And they're like, "Oh, okay, well, I don't know. What do you think?" I said, "I can make it work so that it looks like we're shooting at him, but just have one of the background guys cross in front."
He was grazed. Ryan Robbins, Layden got hit. So, but he did, but you
Um,
did, but it wasn't a fatal shot.
right. So the other person that got killed on that, though,
I see.
instead of Ryan,
I see.
um, do you know who it is?
No, because he didn't come back. And it
Yeah,
wasn't Cory
but
Monteith. I can't see Cory in any of those
it was
shots.
Cory. It was
Did you
Cory.
kill Cory?
Yeah, because he didn't. He wasn't Cory Monteith at the time. He was just Cory.
So he's
And
in
so it's
that
like, "Cory,
retreat, and he's the
can
one
you?"
who gets hit.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my God. Wow. I did not know that, Martin. And
Cory
he
doesn't come back.
only in 200 as a kid Cam.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, man.
So
Cory took
anyway,
one for the
uh,
team.
yeah, but nobody knew, you know.
So I'm gonna have to go back and
So
look. Yeah.
uh, divide and conquer. Um, I really don't remember too much about JR's death, although I do remember that um, uh,
Where's the
I
damn
have to
staff
remember her
weapon when
name.
you need one? You know?
Kirsten Robart, Kirsten. Um, she played one of the assassins, the first one that got that was our
Yeah, she
um,
offs herself. It's not Parker. What's her name? Yeah. Great scene though.
Kristen. I've used her a lot. I actually used her in a movie a little while,
I would
a little while,
I
about
would
four
look it
four years
up,
ago.
but my hotkeys have taken over, and every time I start typing, this screen changes. Oh, phone. Hello.
Okay.
Yes, who was it? So, killed in Divide and Conquer. SG1. Who was it? Astor. Louise Astor, played by, and of course, Louise Astor is her last name in beta canon. Kristen Robek.
Kristen Robek, yeah,
That's it.
who's now changed her name. She's now Lauren Robek.
Okay.
But Kristen Robek, yeah, she was fantastic. We loved her, and um, she scared the crap out of everybody in that scene.
She went berserk.
Um, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. It's little
but
things like that that sell the episode where you realize they're not messing around. You know, this thing
right.
is intense, and all it takes is just that extra 20% from a guest performer for us to go,
Hmm.
whoa, good stuff, man.
Yeah.
Martin, I'm going to go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say the scene between Martouf and Carter. I remember being very, very emotional, for everybody. And I think that it was one of those ones where I had lots of extra crew sitting in watching it too. Um, just because I mean everybody liked working with JR so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Almost like a goodbye.
Yeah.
I Is there any truth to the story with Rick and his kissing scene with Vanessa Angel, where afterwards he was like, "I don't want to do anything like that again"? Was there any truth to that? Where because Jack didn't really have um, romantic scenes with the aliens anymore after that.
No, I'm pretty sure that's true. I am really telling stories out of school here. So,
It's
um,
30 years.
uh, yeah,
Live a
I,
little, a little bit.
I
You don't have to
remember.
tell. Don't have to tell us everything.
It's funny because I went up to Rick afterwards and I went, how was it? He goes, pillows. Her lips are pillows. I just remember him saying that. So Rick enjoyed kissing Vanessa. I don't think that Colonel O'Neill
Yeah,
liked it. Yeah.
that
So
I
yeah,
understand. That's a legitimate
yeah,
distinction. Good on him. Yeah, her lips are pillows.
yeah, yeah.
Another one that I was surprised that we hadn't talked about before, and I've gotten everyone's take on this day. Menace in season 5.
Yep.
Danielle Nicolette is on set. You are filming on September 11th, 2001.
Yep.
Tell me about that
I
morning.
remember exactly sort of that morning. We were shooting in the Norco stages, and we were in the pyramid, um, in a small room, and I was just setting up a shot. And I remember walking past. I think it was the Genii op had a small TV monitor, and I hadn't seen or heard anything about it. And I looked down, and he had a picture on it. And I went, "What's that?" He goes, "Haven't you heard?" And that's when it started to happen. From that point on, everybody was talking about it. And I remember we had decided to keep going, although Chris was very, very upset, to the point of being very emotional. And everybody was just, it was a very quiet morning. And what we did is we brought in a couple of other monitors so we could keep an eye on things that were going on. And at one point, I just remember, I remember when the second tower got hit, I looked down past the cameras and I saw them in a silhouette. I don't know if the shot was a silhouette or whether, from my perspective, it was a silhouette in this small room in the pyramid. And I thought, that's so interesting that I remember that exact frame, as the second tower got hit, and having to go down and talk to them about it, and sitting down with all of them and saying, "This is what's going on. Do we want to continue?"
So you had already started filming.
So it was first thing in the morning. Yeah, it was
Okay.
very early in the morning for us, and we'd started to shoot.
Okay.
And then I think we all wrapped it up at some point. I believe we stopped shooting then, at that point, because Chris just he was a bag of hammers. So yeah,
Wow. You called it, and you guys took the day. So
yeah. And what's interesting is, um, I'm trying to think about what else I remember about the show itself.
can I ask you something while you're noodling that? Um,
Yeah.
is it your purview to call it, or is that something that has to go upstairs and say, "What do you guys think?"
Oh, I was in touch immediately with John Smith and probably with Brad, and we were talking about, what the ramifications of it were and whether
Of course.
we should. And I think that it was one of those things where, it's out of deference to the world,
Yeah,
we stopped. Yeah. Um,
man.
so yeah, I think it was just, we there were too many Americans on our set and too many people in Canada that were affected by it, that it was not something that you could work through.
And I didn't know until last year when I had Christina Cox on that the Sentinel was also filming simultaneously. This is one of
Oh,
the
really?
days where they were shooting the cave sequences where the Sentinel device was, also on
Yeah.
this day. And I didn't know that that sometimes happened where there was some overlap. And I wonder if that
Oh,
has something
yeah.
to do with the earlier call time.
Quite possibly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we would often share people on the same day. Like,
Okay.
there would be a time when I'd have to get somebody off of my set over to another set, you know. So yeah, there was that happened a good deal of the time.
the pyramid that you're describing is the vault where Reese is discovered on her
That's where it was.
planet.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
that near the end of that shoot, or do you think were you just getting started?
I don't remember.
Okay. Okay.
I don't remember. I remember. I think I should probably let me see if I call it up there if I can see it.
Danielle Nicolette is one that I've wanted to have on for years. I can't get her to sit down, and it's not necessarily hard to imagine why. But she kicked ass in that role. She was so good.
Yeah. I think where are we? What season was that?
5,
Sorry.
near the end of 5. Daniel was dead in 2 weeks from your perspective in terms of shoots.
Brian.
You're okay, man.
Sorry, I should have done my homework before.
No, you're all right. It's only Father's Day, Martin. You're talking to someone who currently works 70 hours a week and goes to school and does 2 YouTube channels. So I get it, my friend. So
there we go.
Yeah.
Okay. I was kind of hoping I could actually scroll up to the scene.
Because they go back, they return later. A team does. I forget what they do because we also see they go back and they find the pieces of the replicators on the floor. I think in a different scene. But the first scene is android. So that's the main movement of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they take her body back. That's one of the most amazing effects in the show up to that point is the seamlessness of her neck when it opens up and the power pack that comes out, the disc, and then it goes in and the morph back into her skin was perfect.
Yeah.
Some of those shots were just perfect. I mean, they're flawless. It's like that's a movie quality shot.
Thank you. This is really interesting to me because it is.
Do you have
it's
the raw
wide
script?
shot? No.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm looking at the footage actually.
I see. Oh, you're looking for the frame.
Yeah.
I will pull up the episode myself, and if you
it's right at the very beginning.
Let me pull it here. I can't do a lot of footage on the live stream, but I can do some, and I would like to have this. So, un momento, please. All right. I was on the wrong drive.
It's almost one of the first frames in the whole thing.
Okay. Yeah, let's get this for the Sentinel Menace. There it is. Okay. So Menace was had to have been wrapping because the Sentinel was next on the timeline, and you guys pretty much shot in order. All right. Nearly one of the first up. So you got the overhead shot of the exterior. All right. And then walking.
I think it's actually the next shot. I'm pretty sure that's because from where I was standing, I was looking down at their silhouettes. And I believe that's why you don't see Chris come forward with them. He hangs back at the this is it. This is the shot. Yeah.
Wow.
This is the frame.
This frame was being recorded while the first tower was burning.
Yes.
Oh my God. I did not know that. So this one shot was the one that was done on that first day.
Yeah.
And this is Daniel in the front here?
It starts with Chris and then
so he doesn't know yet what's
at this point he doesn't, because this was the frame when I was doing it. So I believe that what happens is they bring them forward in this. He knows about the first one, and then as the wide shot stops, as it drops down behind her body, that's when we stopped filming. Was when I finished the take on that. I may have even done a second take on it, but yeah.
Wild, man. Wow.
Yeah.
Those are the moments that you
never at this for a long time.
You never forget, you know?
No.
I remember that whole day. The whole day.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. I was a senior in high school. Let's move on. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know that.
Not a problem.
The Storm and the Eye in Atlantis.
I love those two.
This is an amazing 2 hours where everyone is on their A game. You have amazing guest stars. You have amazing acting from your your folks. I think that Joe's best line is in this show, in my opinion, where Kolya says something like, "Shepard, how's this for sincerity? Dr. Ware is dead," and the storm is pouring all over him, and he's just committed into this, focusing all of his anger into this microphone. I am going to kill you, and it's like, I believe that.
Yes.
Great sequence, and he gets a shot off at him, which sends his ass through the gate. But Tori told me that so many of the cast got sick from being in the rain, and this was right before their break, and someone gave them all bottles of wine or champagne or something as a thank you. What do you remember from that?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I had said when we first started setting this up, and with Ray, I said, Ray, it has to be heavy.
Ray Douglas.
It can't just be rain. It has to be heavy. He said, heavy means a lot of water, and a lot of water means containment and weight. And I went, yeah, we need it to be battering them down. And he goes, that's really hard to take if you're an actor, because it's one thing to wet an actor down and then stand them in rain, because I can almost always put rain in front of them and have a little bit falling on them. But in this case, I needed a lot coming down so that it was hair and eyes, so that they couldn't see, so they couldn't move quickly. And it was a lot of that needed to be happening, and continuously. Like, it needed to, the takes in there, if you start watching it, you go, this take is a long take. And you're not even seeing some of the length that we did with some of them, because the other thing I wanted to do when I planned to do it was I needed to get them in there, shoot it, and get them out.
Yeah.
It wasn't take 2, take 3, take 4. You wanted to get it in that one take. And I have cameras in the rain. I have cameras shooting through the rain, and just so that I've got different angles. So I'm covering everything as much as I can.
So you're trying to get all the coverage simultaneously in one of these,
so that they're not, that they're not having to be out there all the time.
Yeah.
And I remember on a couple of things, and I think David was the one that held up the best, because he had to be out there the longest.
Yeah.
He and Joe had to be out there so long, and Joe is funny, because there's certain times when he's like, nah, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, well, we kind of have to.
You got a paycheck, buddy.
Yeah.
There's the line. You stand on that, even if it's raining on you.
Yeah.
We're gonna make it as comfortable as. Did they have wetsuits underneath?
Yes.
Okay, so that's something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, except for the fact that the rain comes from the top, and that means it goes down into the wetsuit and things like that. It's not like you're being sprayed with water.
And you can't keep the water warm, like really warm necessarily, like they're bathing in a bath. No. You would get steam. All the cameras would fog up.
And the other problem with it is it's very hard to keep the water warm when you're recycling it that much. When there's that much water going through the thing, it's really hard to keep it going. And I think that for me, what happened is that we had to make certain promises to them. And just so you know, and I mean, anybody that works with me, any of the actors that work with me know that I do this all the time. If I'm going to ask you to be there, I'm going to be there too.
Yeah.
So I'm standing in the rain the entire time.
In your shorts, I'm sure.
I'll call. Yeah, I did. I'll call action and cut, standing there with you, like this far away from you, so that when it comes down to, I cannot take this anymore, they know that I'm standing there.
That's right.
That's
right. Not only are you a team player, but you're experiencing it exactly the same amount.
Yeah. And I think it's important to them. I mean, it certainly would be if I was an actor. I think it would be important to me to know that it's not just somebody who's warm and dry calling action and cut over there. Mm-hmm. In Sanctuary, when we did Next Tuesday, it was me being in the tank with Amanda and Robin for 5 days, not ever getting out of it.
Wow.
So that, again, that we experienced in the Grace Under Pressure. Same thing. Grace. I was in there with David and Amanda on like the whole time,
Yeah.
with Rick swimming underwater, which is fantastic. I had air, he did not. And he swims over and he flips the switch. And I'm like, okay, Rick, go up for air, go up for air. And he's like, swim back, and he swims back. And I remember the cameraman, Nathaniel, and I, we're both under and we both have air. And we're both sitting there going, he's not going up. Because I expected to do it in cuts. And he goes, man, let's do it in one.
Yeah,
And he did it
he's got
in
the
one.
lung
whole
capacity
swim is
for
in
it.
one.
And Cory Nemec
Yeah.
did the same thing, activating the rings and switching the crystals around in Descent. He was very proud of that. But there was a jiggle in the crystals, the plexiglass or whatever it was, and they had to cut away from it. And it was like, oh my God, he actually did the take. Visual effects it, fix it. You have to give honor to that. But what an extraordinary sequence when that water drops from the ceiling and just oh man, these are amazing sequences. And you have to,
these are some of my favorites that I mean, especially getting to do it at the level that we were able to do it in the earlier days of Atlantis, where we were playing around with how much we could do. And it was just, this was one of those all out kind of sequences.
Yep. Built on years of figuring it out on SG-1 and what that team was capable of doing, which
Very
built a lot
much,
on MacGyver. How much time do you have, Martin?
Probably another 15 minutes.
15 minutes. All right. The other thing that, how do you green screen those shots? When Kolya's got Rodney by the scruff of his outfit and this green screen behind with all the pouring rain, how do you key that to replace the background with ocean?
Let me just see if I can find it. Let me see if I can find it.
You still need me. So this would be the beginning of part 2.
I've got it here. I'm just, I some of it, when you're looking at, I'm just looking at the sequence right now with the three of them out there.
Waterproof walkie-talkies.
They were all destroyed.
Yeah.
Everything that was out in the rain.
Genii walkie-talkie right here. Genii baby mama bear walkie-talkie. Yep. So.
I'm just trying to get to. Oh, there it is. Okay. The shots of David don't have any rain in the foreground.
I see.
They don't have any rain foreground or background. So I can put him on green screen. I can have rain on him, but there's no rain in between. So what I'm doing is we have a clean green screen, and he's got rain coming down on him, like just in his little bit there. But he's the rain, the heavy rain foreground and background is all Visifect.
A clean plate. Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So the only reason you would have rain on him is enough to be able to make it so that his forehead and so that the rain was dripping down his face still. So you'd have something very close to him, putting water on top of him. But yeah.
Chantel Leo wants to know, Martin, what is a favorite single scene from Sanctuary? She says, mine is the Magnus Druid scene, stick tongue out face.
when he's dying?
I'm not sure. She says, yeah. Chantel Leo, if you could clarify.
I gotta tell you that one of my favorite Magnus Druid scenes is the fight in London. In the rain. That was another one in the rain. Amanda, if you ever ask Amanda, it's like, yeah, Martin can't stop from putting me in like soaking wet. Soaking wet period in that one. Soaking wet period stuff.
He knows you can act.
Yeah. But that fight was one of my favorites in Stargate or in Sanctuary, because it was such a brutal fight.
Wow.
And Amanda does a lot of it, and Chris does a lot of it. So it was one of those ones where, um, but there's so many scenes that I loved in Sanctuary. Um, I think the whole idea of having um, Amanda twin herself with some of the stuff, some of that twinning that I did when she went back into old London.
Yeah.
Um,
Because Magnus
and
was
then
alive.
Ian, yeah, and then Ian had to twin himself as well. Ian Tracy had to twin himself as well. Some of that stuff was some of the best times on Sanctuary. So I have trouble just differentiating between the dramatic scenes that I loved, the writing and the acting in, and the scenes where I just had so much fun doing them. And I think next Tuesday was one of the ones that I had so much fun doing. Kush was another one. I really enjoyed Kush because it was so truncated. It was 5 days and it was in a plane. And it was just nice to work with actors that close, and it was very tactile. It was very much like we were all on top of each other, and the cameras were in there, and we were all shooting very tight. It was just one of the very tight things. So I had a good time with that.
Mhm. Admiral Minell, we've heard epic tales of the cut scenes and outtakes from the Avenger 2.0 action sequence, the second episode that featured Jay. Do you remember anything about that? About what was cut? This one that was just dropped in on my lap. So Jay shuts down the Stargate network, and he and Amanda have to go off-world under fire from Balls Jaffa to try and fix the DHD that's propped open.
Which episode is that?
It's season 7,
What's
so it's Avenger
what's
2.0.
the Avenger 2.0?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that
I'm
was.
trying to think.
Let me see here. So the early half of season 7, and that was the second and last appearance of Jay Felger.
Yeah,
Who, and that was obviously Patrick McKenna.
right. Who was hysterical?
Yeah, so that's this one here.
Right.
Thank you, Gate World. And Carter with her Carter special.
Oh, this is the one where was it there was something about ejecting shells out of that.
Yes.
Um, that shut us down because it was just they were blasting off into, were they hitting Patrick?
That sounds very likely.
I can't remember. I think it was something like that. Yeah. Um, Let me just quickly scroll into it.
I have a quick
Because yeah,
question.
generally, yes.
So when the Stargate's on location like this, is there always a wire on top securing it from falling over that's always painted
No.
out? Okay.
No.
But the Universe
It's
Gate
all-
in
it's-
Air was on location, definitely.
Yeah, it's very
Okay.
much it's a very much a solid structure
Wow.
because there would be no way we could secure it because sometimes it's in the middle of a desert.
That's a true
You
point.
know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm letting you down on this one because I can't get it to come up.
Yeah, this one just came in for us there, but there's so many stories, man.
Yes, there are.
That's the thing.
I think if I do my homework a little bit better, I'll
Yeah.
have more for you. But
Yeah. Well, you know what? There's always next time.
well, I appreciate that very much.
I
And
appreciate you doing
keep
this.
calling. Um,
Can I move forward? We only have like 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
9
Yes.
minutes.
Yep.
Jim Donaldson, have you ever considered sitting down and writing a memoir on directing? Would love to read one. Has it crossed your mind?
No.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
I think maybe when I at some point when I stop,
Yeah.
I might think about it, but no, I have it feels like I'm in the middle of it right now, so I'm not sure what I would write about. I have a billion stories, but honestly, I think I'll wait till I'm done and then look back at it and say, okay, what I'm doing now is I'm mentoring a bunch of directors from the Directors Guild and things like that. I do a bunch of different things. I've had a couple shadow me. And are now directing, like a friend of mine is directing her 20th movie. She shadowed me for a bunch of time. Peter Benson, Peter Benson, the actor.
Name rings a bell. Yeah.
Um, Peter did the same thing. He
Okay.
he shadowed me. Paula MacArthur, who goes by Paula L, is the one that's just finishing her 20th thing. Robin Dunn is just he's today he started shooting a movie in Kelowna, and Robin and I have been writing partners. He writes, I direct a bunch of his stuff. Lately, we've been doing a lot of it,
The
and
Dunner. You're making an appearance in his upcoming movie,
yeah,
The Dunner. So I'd
yeah.
pull it up, except
Um,
it changed the keys around. But yeah, that's really cool, man.
Robin and I have been together ever since we did a really, really bad horror movie in Romania in 1997. Um,
Wow.
I took him to Romania with me, and we became best friends then, and uh, we have been there ever since. Like even on the Sanctuary, we didn't cast him. I mean, I cast him without seeing an audition.
Hmm.
I brought him in, convinced Amanda and Damien that he was the guy,
Hmm.
and of course he became, Will instantly.
He has this
And
Tom
now
Hanks
he's
level of charm.
and he's directing and acting and writing, and he does it all. He's a real Renaissance guy.
Ah, good for him.
Oh,
That's great.
and we have a film club that we have done. That we're in our third year of film club. I don't know if I told you about this before, but
No.
every Sunday night at 6 o'clock, Robin Dunn, his wife Farah, myself, my wife Diane, um, Paula L, and her husband Tim MacArthur, and when we started, it was Lucy Guest, the other another director. We started a film club where at the beginning of the season we all put in 8 movies that we want to watch, and then we just watch. And every Sunday, no matter where we are in the world, we really try and get together. And Robin is shooting today, so we moved it to Tuesday when his day off. But we have done this now for 3 years, and it's really fascinating. It's fascinating because on the panel, it's a group of friends, but there's 3 directors on it, and we all have different perspectives on it. And Farah is an actor, and my wife is a screenwriter, and Tim has worked in the industry
Hmm.
since he started work. And we all have such varying ways of looking at things, but it's a fascinating thing. It's a fascinating thing to get to know people like that as directors
Hmm.
and in what they see when they're watching a film. We've talked about wanting to watch each other's films. We all see each other's films all the time,
Hmm.
but watch as a film club film continuum, or an episode of Sanctuary or an episode of Travelers or something like that, where we can show the other directors what we've done, and then have commentary about that. But I think we're all afraid of what others are going to say about it.
You did what you could with what you had and anything that you were given, but you all have a creative drip that just won't shut off, So you're consuming
Yeah.
this media and it's like, ooh, I like that, or that was cool, or
Mhm.
well, I wouldn't go near that. And what it does is you're logging this away, and when you go to sleep,
Yeah.
you're assimilating it into your subconscious, and
So
it
much,
becomes new
so much.
ideas because this is your field.
I actually changed the way I shoot this one murder mystery series I'm doing right now. I changed the way I shot it after the first one because had on a film club film, I'd seen a certain way of blocking, and I'm going to use that from now on. And I've done 2 more films since then, and it really shows up on the screen
The
that
voices that
I'm,
you let in are the voices that come
yeah,
out. Writers, it's all the
absolutely,
same thing.
absolutely, yeah,
Wow. Well,
yeah,
hopefully those are good
very
traits.
much. I hope so, because there's, I mean, we notice it's so easy to sort of say I don't like that, I don't like that, but for the most part, when you have a bunch of sort of I hate to use this word, artists
Yeah,
together,
creatives.
um, yeah, I never call us filmmakers, and I call us directors, even though we all write and we all direct and we all do everything, but when you have us all together, we see the same things. We just see them a different way. We see them like, okay, I'm going to forgive that. I'm not going to forgive this. I'm going to use that. I can't use this. How could you talk about using that because it's so difficult to do this? And it's just it's fun to watch. It's like watching when I go back to watch at Stargates, and they're so long ago, and they're the beginning of sort of me learning how to do this. I watch and I just cringe at some stuff, and I go, oh man, I really did that well. I forgot I used to do that you know and if anybody's watching any of the stuff that I'm shooting these days, the Virgin Rivers and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, they'll see that I almost never do singles. I almost never do a tight single like this. And watching some of the stuff from season 3, I'm like, wow, all I did were singles. I hardly did any overs at all. I just did these things.
You were just getting
Um,
started, man.
yeah,
You can only kick
yeah,
yourself around so much. That Martin
yeah.
then is not the Martin that you are today, you know?
No, I
And
kind of
not the
wish though
Martin
on
that
some of the
was
stuff I had a
influenced
chance to do
by
it again.
Amanda and Damien and all the people who
Yeah,
weave through your life. So
yeah, it's very true.
I have two questions that dovetail into one another. One is
Okay.
from a fan, and then one is mine, and then we're done. Martin, I thought the story about your dad was very heartwarming. Jeremy Heiner says, my dad was the person who got me into Stargate, and we bonded over Sci-Fi Fridays when we watched SG-1 Atlantis and Battlestar together. What was your dad's favorite episode of Stargate?
Okay. Oddly, we mentioned it today. Matter of Time was his favorite. Um, and
Started with it. Isn't that weird?
his second favorite is my favorite, which is Small Victories. Um,
Sub.
yeah, Small Victories. Um, I mean, he always loved the beginning and the end. If I did the like Lost City was one of his favorites,
Yeah.
and the Atlantis pilot was one of his favorites. But I think in terms of SG-1, Matter of Time was one of the ones that he talked about a lot.
Yeah.
Small Victories. He asked me once. He said, "What's your favorite?" I said, "Small Victories." He said, "That's my second favorite." And then
Do you know what I had to do with that torpedo tube? They locked me in there
yeah,
like a vault.
I think that's why he liked it because I had that story of having to get the shot myself. Um, uh,
Well, I
but
guess I'm going
Line of
in.
Duty was another one. Line of Duty was another one for him. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, great episode.
Um,
Great episode with Amanda. She was fantastic. And then
yeah.
finally, tell me how fatherhood has made you a better man.
Um, a better man. I mean, it gave me a sense of responsibility that I didn't know you needed, and you absolutely need it to be, to be grounded. It's uh, it's it's something. I mean, I've been looking at pictures lately of my son who I used to take to set, and there are pictures of him sort of sitting there with headphones on while there's like cans on while there's guns going off, and he'd sit on my lap. And today he took me for brunch with my two daughters, and he's 6'5" and a monster. Like
Wow.
he's a monster.
Yeah.
He was a rower for a number of years, and then he's so strong right now. And the reason I'm bringing that up is I'm proud of him, but it's also I see the difference between the little tiny guy that I used to carry around and this guy that can literally lift me up and carry me around. Um, and um, there's a there is a thing that goes along with fatherhood, which is it's all about responsibility. You have responsibility for these people, and then you get to see sort of what that it's like a teaching. It's like teaching somebody for their whole life. You know, you're a teacher that can just turn around and go, well, and I taught school for 11 years. I watched 400 students go out into the world, and I work with some of them sometimes now, and they come up and say the most beautiful things about what they learned from me. And I have a family that does the same thing all the time. They just go, what I learned from you, without saying that, because they're too proud to do, they're too proud to say, I learned this from you, Dad. But what's really interesting, and again, this may be in the weeds for your audience,
Please.
David, but my son went out to work on his first movie set 2 weeks ago. Spent 2 weeks on. He really wants to be an assistant director. He's so creative. He's writing his own scripts. He's shooting his own stuff, but he really wanted to be on an actual set so he could actually watch what was going on with it, not from the perspective of my son. So he wasn't on one of my sets. He was on actually Paula MacArthur's set, Paula L's set. Um, and what happened was at the end of it, at the end of the 2 weeks, he called me on their wrap and he said, Dad, I want to just tell you something. And this may or may not make sense to you, but I had no idea you worked this hard.
Yeah.
I went, oh, oh, he said, I can't believe. I mean, I worked my butt off for 2 weeks and I have a job that I just move stuff around and I stop and I wait until the rest of it goes on. But he watches Paula and he watches the director work. He said, you never stop. You're on from before you start till an hour afterwards. You're on. And what was interesting to me was that he'd never sort of seen that. But for his life, 19 years, he's seen me come and go at
That's
the
right.
opposite ends of it, like going to work now, coming home from work, but didn't have an appreciation for what that was. It was really interesting to hear him say that, because
Yeah.
you don't think about that as a dad. You think about the time when you land at home and now I'm a dad again.
Yeah, I had similar conversations with my father, who was an EMS helicopter pilot for 30 years, and
Wow.
flew for 17,000 flight hours. And there are just certain depths that you go through that your kids don't ever know unless they get near enough to be put into your shoes. And he's experiencing that for
Yeah.
himself. Thank you for
David, go
sharing
give
that
him a
story.
big hug for
Oh
me and for
yes,
everybody else.
yes,
It's one of those things where I wish I could hug my dad a lot more than I ever did. I was a big hugger, but uh, you saw in those pictures, that's what we did. What we were like, mugged and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I would say hug your dad.
yep. I appreciate you taking the time with me today, and happy Father's Day, Martin.
Thank you, thank you, and to you
Forever.
and everybody out there.
You
Okay,
have always been wonderful for coming on. So you get going, and I'll text you soon.
okay, David, thank you so much. Take care. Bye bye.
That's Martin Wood, producer and director of Stargate. I really love what I do. I love sharing people's stories and uncovering aspects of them, people that I've known for 20 years, um, parts of them that I didn't know was there. And the fact that they trust me enough with their energy and their time to come on and share these stories with you means all the world to me. So thank you, Martin. Thank you. So, my name is David Reed. You're watching the Stargate Oral History Project, Dial the Gate. If you enjoy this content and you want to see more of it on YouTube, click that like button. It does make a difference with the show and will continue to help us grow our audience. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend. And if you want to get notified about future episodes, click subscribe. And clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next few weeks on both the Dial the Gate and GateWorld.net YouTube channels. One of these days I will get through that without slipping it up in some way. Thanks to my producers, Anthony Rowling, Kevin Weaver, and Linda Gategaber Fury, my moderating team, Anthony, Jeremy, Kevin, Lockwatcher, Marcia, Raj, and Jacob. I can't do this show without you guys. You guys really pinch hitted me for this one at the last minute. Is what that means? Martin's schedule is very chaotic, so generally I can only give him he can only give me a few days notice. And so yesterday at 5 o'clock, he was like, I'll be there tomorrow. And it's like, Mods, what can you do? And so we made it work. And you guys are amazing. And Martin is amazing for sharing all these stories. Big thanks to Frederick Marcoux over at Concepts Web, who keeps dialthegate.com up and running. A number of shows are going to be heading your way for the rest of this season as we continue to move forward. I am waiting to hear back from 2 right now that haven't locked in dates yet. A certain replicator that hasn't been on the show before, and a certain terraforming ship copy of another civilization in their image that hasn't been on the show before. But once we can nail this down, I'll publish the dates, because I realize that putting their names out, even though they've agreed to come on before we've got dates, is bad mojo. So we're going to keep it at that. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll see you on the other side.